Guys, this is quite a group that we've assembled here at 71Above here downtown Los Angeles. Emil, the proprietor and owner of 71Above, Alan, CEO of SageGlass, and John, the founder and inventor of SageGlass. This is a group that doesn't normally get together. We don't normally see the beginning, the middle, and the end of a product, but that's exactly what we see here in this restaurant.
When I first walked in here, the majority of the shades on the south side of the building were drawn down. And when you look at the south side of the building from the outside, because I was also looking from the outside up, folks that have their offices on the south side, typically during the daytime, had their shades down. And immediately I said, well, how do you develop a world-class destination, special occasion restaurant, and then have the shades drawn down to eliminate the view? So
there's probably health concerns there too, right? With the blinds and having a space like this that is already beautiful just because where it sits, to have those blinds that shuts the world off, and that's the whole point of this place.
Correct. People are coming here. This is a restaurant for Los Angeles. It was built to be a restaurant for Los Angeles, a jewel of Los Angeles. And if you're going to come here to see Los Angeles and say, oh, that's my neighborhood, and understand not the major landmarks, but the landmarks that you recognize in your neighborhood or areas that you've been in Los Angeles as an Angelino, and all of a sudden there's the blinds or the shades come down and there's nothing there, and you're in what I call any other restaurant space with no windows.
So John, when you invented this technology and this glass, and you said to yourself, this is what I want to see in 25 years, is this what you wanted to see?
This is exactly, Adam, what I wanted to see. And I had this dream sort of vision, Emil, that I'd be sitting in a restaurant with a great view. I thought about water, but also a skyline like Los Angeles. It absolutely fits this end dream of glass being installed, preserving the view, having comfort, convenience, not to mention all the energy savings benefits. So yes, Adam, absolutely. Emil has captured my dream.
This is not just a window. This is electrochromic glass, and that's very different than just a window. Tell me what this really is and why it's important.
I like to try and keep the technology as simple as possible when we think about what it does for people. The pure technology is very complicated. The nanotechnology and the coatings applications we use, the types of controls and sensory systems, we can get very complicated about explaining that. But fundamentally, the best technology is the simplest technology. You can sit in a space here with the light level and the heat levels being measured, and the system will determine what level of tint that window should be at. So in very extreme situations, at night, obviously, you don't want a tinted window. You want an ultra clear window to be able to see the view. But during the day, with the sun outside blaring straight in, that clear window gives you every sort of problem that you don't want. You can't see, you've got too much glare, you've got too much heat. You have a view, but you're blinded by the amount of light. With this product, it can tint itself down just to the right level that gives you that view without you having the pain in your eyes of experiencing it. So it's dynamic, it changes to suit the needs that you have. And one of the beauties of Emil's facility is it's 360 degrees. So literally at any point in time, the glass is in one of its states as it faces a different direction. So if we're south facing and the sun's outside, it needs to be heavily tinted. But the north facing side is letting all that natural daylight into the space, so it can be everything that is needed in one glass.
And when I walked into this space during dinner time, that was the first thing I saw. Lights and the city and people and living and life out there. I didn't see the wine, I'm sorry. I didn't see the wine immediately. I saw the outside, and that's what you were hoping, is people come through that entryway, right?
That's correct. The two main things that Alan mentioned, we were looking at the VLT number, which is the amount of clarity that we get out of the information that not being blocked by coatings on the glass. So the combination of glass that Alan and Sage were able to put together for this particular restaurant is the highest amount of light that we can get in its clear state through the glass system. And the second challenge that we had was the reflectivity, which Alan also mentioned. If you go to certain places and that isn't thought about, what you end up seeing is the reflection of light bulbs and light sources within competing with the lesser light outside. And so we had to manage that competition to make sure that reflectivity on the inside was the lowest possible number we could get to in order to allow for the darkness outside and the twinkling lights of the city to overpower the information on the inside of the space.
The wonderful thing, I think, for us, including myself and our scientists and engineers, was to take a designer's vision. Not always just, here's the numbers that it has to meet. We had to translate that into performance. But with Emil, he understood that as well. As he starts to talk about variable light transmission numbers, we knew we had a customer who we could feed that back to and say, this is what we can achieve. Here's where the compromise might be here. How do you feel about that? You know, when we talked about some artifacts of the dynamic glazing that we could offer, you know, we could improve reflectivity, but it will be at a compromise perhaps with light transmission, or there might be a difference in exterior aesthetic. Emil was able to get involved and respond to that. And then when we started to show him the mock-up, you know, he started to pick into where he wanted that perfection. That sounds bad, but for us it's great, because we're dealing with a high-end, you know, beautifully stunning product which fundamentally changes what people think about glass. So we want customers like that. We're not targeting the lowest end, cheapest glazing possible. We're looking at helping someone achieve what they want in the space, whether it's a restaurateur with a vision or a commercial office block owner who knows he wants the space for their people to be more productive in. When they understand the value proposition, that's when it's fantastic to work with.
It seems to me that Emil obviously is the ideal client for us, that type of a client. This is what we need. And I think this is what is going to, I think in a way, for lack of a better term, say Emil is a pioneer in a sense of, I think more the architectural community is going to start to think like Emil and understand the real feature benefits of dynamic SageGlass, all the people contributions, the comfort contributions, the preservation of view, connection to the outdoors, and of course the tremendous energy savings. And I really enjoyed listening to this, Adam, this conversation between Alan and Emil about that, because I truly view the next stage is that more of the industry and clients in the architectural industry is going to start to think more like Emil.
I think the synergies that you've had in creating 71Above and John's had in getting Sage off the ground are obviously there, which is maybe again why we had such a strong connection and could relate to what you were trying to do, because this didn't come across to us as another restaurant. This came across as something completely different in terms of the challenge you wanted to address with this space. And when I visit you and I see the people coming in and experience it, they don't know why this space is so cool. They just know it's cool. And that's the best. We don't want a big sign saying, look at what these windows can do, or look at what this type of material can do. They just want to feel that this is an amazing place.
You just want it to happen, right?
Yes. A unique place.
When you I've heard visionary, I've heard entrepreneur, I've heard those words thrown around a lot here so far in our conversation. But one word that hasn't been really said is inventor. You guys invented a product and you invented a category. And when you were inventing this, John, you wanted it to just happen. You didn't want people to really notice that it was happening. You didn't want people to come in and say, oh wow, it's dark here and light there, and necessarily you just wanted them to be comfortable and for it to work for the space. Is that fair to say?
Adam, that's more or less, you more or less captured it. I mean, I was very much enamored with the energy saving aspects of dynamic SageGlass, because it is quite significant and
But
meaningful.
was that as important back then as it is now? I mean, did you see that being?
I came out of the thin film photovoltaic solar field. That was my background on glass. That's how I came after a decade in that industry. I came to the realization, or the view, I should say, that you could actually save more energy by having a dynamic glazing, SageGlass, than you could actually create with a photovoltaic solar cell. And that's going back now almost 30 years, and conversion efficiencies back then were not as high as they are today. And I want this conversation to get me wrong. I'm a supporter of solar energy, but and that's what I left with. That's why I started Sage with this idea that we're going to make Windows dynamic, and there's going to be two big draws to it, and it's going to be the energy savings, and it's going to be the people part of it, the people, the comfort, the preservation of view, connection to the outdoor, no moving parts, no maintenance for shades and blinds. And you think about shades and blinds, whether they're exterior or interior, they're typically made out of aluminum. Well, aluminum has to be mined. There's a lot of electricity and water that goes into it. They have to be transported, and 5 years later they have to be usually fixed or sent to the recycle. We eliminated all that with this solid state Electrochromic SageGlass. So that was really what propelled me, was the factor. And the fact of the matter is that we're always going to design buildings with glass. I mean, that's going to happen. It has happened since the day of the caveman wanted a connection to the outdoors.
So we made sure we had the right partners. And even then it wasn't easy. It was still a difficult thing to achieve. But you look at what the iconic nature of this product can be and what this restaurant is going to become, and you just say, we want involved. We need to be a company who is listening to what the customer wants and delivering on a solution. There's value in that. Rather than delivering what we want to deliver, it's listening to what that need is and being honest with the customer sometimes and saying, you know, we're not sure our product will deliver that for you, and here's why we think that, so that we're not selling something which fails to meet the expectation at the end of the day. So the right partnerships, using Saint-Gobain's depth of experience in structures like this throughout the world. Yes, it's a first for Sage and a first for Electrochromics to be at this height in a building, but it's not the first for a company like Saint-Gobain or Giraud to glaze at this level. So it's to use all those experiences. And whilst Electrochromic is so fundamentally different from normal glass, the installation of it isn't that different. It's not that you need completely different skill sets. It's just about using
that's surprising. People probably don't even realize that, because when you look at the perceived science of it, and you're hearing big words that don't mean much to me, but I'm sure to you guys mean a lot. It seems as if it should be very difficult to apply, especially all the way up here. That's not the case.
It's not really the case. I mean, people will first look at it, a glazing contractor maybe doing the job for the first time will start, a good one, will start to say, what are all the differences that I need to cope with? Because if they're not a good one and they're not thinking of the differences, they'll get a surprise. But when they've done a job and they've experienced it the first time, they then realize, you know, that was not that more difficult than a normal glazing job, and the wiring that's required is not as complex as I thought. And we have a project manager for every project. It's not like we just sell a window. We stay with the project throughout, and our project manager works closely with them. So it's a lot simpler than people first think. We find when people price a job using Electrochromic, they initially put a crazy markup, there's the crazy word again, because they're a little fearful of what could it mean. Once they've done it, they realize, wow, that was a lot easier than we first thought.
The hardest thing about installing this glass was drilling a hole in the mullion for the wire and picking the correct gasket moving forward, because the gaskets do have to be changed around the mullion. And the rest of it is just the same as replacing a normal IGU. These high-rise buildings, either with bird strikes or with shifting, do have regular units that they lose. And these companies come out and they change these units on a regular basis. Most modern high-rises have a few windows changed a year. And there's nothing different as how this happened. It just happened to be 192 windows that had to be changed at the same time, or the same.
Seems simple enough,
right.
doesn't it?
But aside from that, really, like I said, it's just the gaskets and the path for the wire.
And then we had this interesting one of educating Emil on how to use the control systems, because we want the sensors to do it all, but Emil, as the perfectionist that we know him to be, he wants control. He started to experiment about when to tint the glass at certain times of the day. And again, that's what I think is fun.
The system has a lot of capability and functionality. We're not using a lot of it, but not to say that we might not use it in the future, but the system can basically turn every single window bay, which we have 24 sets of window bays, every single window bay could be a different zone. When we first programmed the system, we programmed it all to be changing to the same tint level at the same time. And one of the things that we had to also factor in was we're serving our food on either bone china or on custom thrown pottery. And what color is that pottery going to be? What color is the china going to be? How is that? You don't want the plate to turn or look blue, or not look the color that you want it to. And all of these things had to be factored in on top of the menu and things that you mentioned earlier. And what we ended up doing later on...
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
That really is.
I mean, no one's really attracted to eating blue chicken.
Well, yeah, they're not, but you wouldn't think that the glass could have that much impact on the color and the look of the food, therefore mentally the patron's experience at your restaurant.
Yeah, I
but
mean,
you had that forethought.
We could simply have gone and bought rolls of tint and bought a tinting company out here, and they could have just slapped on some tint like most other commercial.
How does that make you feel to hear that? Are you okay?
It's adding to the value prop. I can feel the ability to price it higher.
That was the easy thing, right? You just call a commercial tint company. They come and tint all the windows. The downside of that is you have what the temperature of light you have inside you're stuck with forever, and at nighttime you're just going to see a nice reflection of the restaurant in the window. You're not going to see anything outside. Within the first month of opening, we basically turned the lowest portion, the lowest zone of the side light to completely clear during the daytime, and introduced a lot of natural light.
And I think it's stunning when I saw the first images that Emil showed, just to see people sat there with their cell phones, with their back to the window. The sun is outside, the majority of the glass is tinted, but they can see glare-free on their cell phone. And then you see the natural light coming in beside them, so that they are still feeling very, very connected to the outdoors. So stunning. And again, it says to Emil that detail that he was willing to think about way back then, not as something that happened later. He was thinking about this feeling in the space right from the beginning. Great customer.
Another important part of this iconic project is the aspect, it was a renovation, it was a reglazing. And the reason I bring this up is because if you think about it, the installed building stock around the world is very, very large. And so there's this opportunity for both the energy saving aspects of installing dynamic SageGlass and increasing the comfort and the well-being of the occupants of the building. Not only are we now talking about new construction, but we're looking at the whole opportunity of renovation, which Emil has done here. and the
And
ability
there's
to do
one
that.
important point there as well. Is that this is a restaurant, and what we're using this in a high-rise is not typical, as you mentioned earlier. The fact that this is a round space, we've got 2 private dining rooms on the north side of the building that if it were an office space, you wouldn't need to change that glass out. But because it is a private dining room and we might have a client that comes in that wants to do a daytime presentation on a projector, we now have the ability to take that one particular room and take that all the way down to 1% limo tint, and the room right next to it could be clear, or whatever else the other client in the other room wants to do. But if it's a normal office use and the main exposure is on the south, you don't have to change all the glass of a building. So what you're saying is exactly right. It can be done.
It can be done.
Currently, what we ended up going with, which might change in the future, but within the first month of opening, we basically turned the lowest portion, the lowest zone of the side light to completely clear during the daytime and introduced a lot of natural light.
And I think it's stunning when I saw the first images that Emil showed, just to see people sat there with their cell phones, with their back to the window. The sun is outside, the majority of the glass is tinted, but they can see glare-free on their cell phone. And then you see the natural light coming in beside them so that they are still feeling very, very connected to the outdoors. So stunning. And again, it says to Emil that detail that he was willing to think about way back then, not as something that happened later. He was thinking about this feeling in the space right from the beginning. Great customer.
I just see an evolution of mankind's technology capabilities. And the evolution is to make life more healthy, more comfortable, more efficient, more productive. And you know, things like the internet or GPS or the ability to Snapchat and all these things contribute to mankind's, in a way, well-being and advancement.
I think
see-
your glass is more advanced than Snapchat. I'll be honest with you. I think it's helping mankind a little bit more than Snapchat. Maybe I'm off, but
maybe it's just because I wish I was
I
part of
think
the
most of us would
right.
probably agree with you, Adam. We would hope so.
And Emil, you probably think that too, right? I mean, this has changed the whole outlook. This has changed the whole restaurant.
Yeah, earlier you had said something about Pioneer and used myself in that same sentence, and I felt a little uncomfortable. That wasn't really the intent. The intent was exactly that, is to develop something that gives people a unique experience from A to Z. And part of that experience is the food, the service, but part of it is also the glass, the comfort level. It's a combined package, and it had to happen that way for the experience to feel complete and not have a spike of discomfort or some sort of, I like that place, but. One of the most momentous moments of the construction build-out was ripping out the shades above the windows, which had been installed when the building was originally built. So that was a great moment.
Yes.
And none of that really could have happened without you and Sage and the partnership and friendship that has been built. And I think that's really, the credit goes there.
Well, speaking of shades, you guys have a beautiful sunset here, and can you imagine in your head somebody having to open the shades or close the shades for the sunset?
It's far worse than that, because unless you are in this space, because it's completely unobstructed sunset, I thought, even with knowing what the glass was capable of doing, I thought we were going to be, I didn't want to use the 1% setting, the limo tint, this is the darkest setting. And I told our project manager, I'd spoken to Alan, and I said, I don't think we're going to use 1%. Let me tell you, at sunset, we go to 1%. We have to. It's uncomfortable. You do get a lot of glare even in the 6% mode.
But the problem's solved,
Now the problem is completely solved.
and it wouldn't be.
No, there would be no sunset because the shades would be covering it.
And people would be sitting there at the window seat saying, why am I here?
These are nice blinds.
What am I doing here?
So maybe we can get some of these blinds in our home.
Well, guys, this has been great. You know, we don't have these conversations very often, and there's not often that we get the pioneer and an inventor and a CEO and manager of the product, and then the end user all at the table at the same time. The management, the leadership, and the ingenuity here at this one table, not including myself, obviously, is unbelievable. So I thank you guys for the conversation, and it's been good to hear how this product has really helped and how everyone has had an experience here. It's been very fun.
Thanks, Adam, and thanks for getting us together. I mean, as you say, we just don't do it often enough, and it is fun to think about what we've achieved.
Thanks, guys.
Adam.
Thank you.
Thank you.